listening to an exclusive on PodHub Network. Your city, your podcast.
To the delight of this crowd, McClendon marches down the dugout steps with first base. McCutcheon's throw. The runner breaks to the plate. Here's the throw. He is out. The Buccos win.
That ball's hit well to left center field. Back toward the track. And that ball is gone.
You are listening to the North Shore 9 podcast. Follow them on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Also, make sure to watch NS9 live every Thursday on Twitch and help support by becoming a patron. Let's go Bucks!
Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to wNS9 Plus. I'm your host, Anthony DiNardo. With me, we got Tyler. We got Jim. We got our special guest, Mike Persak from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. What's up, everyone? Welcome, Mike. How you doing?
Living the dream. How are you guys?
Living the dream.
I'm cold.
It's freaking cold out.
It's really cold today. Yeah, it's nuts.
Wait, I don't know. Maybe this isn't information you want out there. But Jim, are you in Pittsburgh?
I'm not. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay. I realized halfway through that question I might be doxing you. I didn't want to do that, but
You're good, you're good. My full name's on Twitter, so yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it is. It's cold everywhere.
Yeah, it really is. I'm freezing.
Shut up.
And I'm dead serious.
shut
I am.
up,
It's
I'm
like 40
freezing.
degrees there, probably.
Exactly. That's what
It
I'm
was
talking
negative
about.
4 when I got in my car this morning.
Well, you're a dummy living up there still.
You're not wrong.
I mean, though, imagine being at like Michigan or something. That state's awful.
You're not lying about that.
Whoa. Scoreboard, Tyler.
Let's just go back over my lifetime. Or in your lifetime.
We'll take one.
Oh, I think we lost
You
Jim.
got like
There we go. I'm back.
you got 3 in my lifetime, I think. Something like that.
I think I'm not sure how many I have in my lifetime. All I can remember is 2011 and this one, so we'll take it.
2011 didn't count. That was Luke Fickle.
Sure, yeah, which is what made this one like better. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to argue with you about like series dominance, but I'll take the one. That's my point.
I don't count 2011 as a year.
That's fine.
The Buckeyes.
We still
playing good.
almost lost that game, which gets lost in it. We still almost lost that game.
That was Braxton.
Legend.
They have
Sorry.
no idea what we're talking about.
Oh, I do.
I think in general they do. Yeah.
I'm gonna say I really don't, but this also kind of sums up the MLB offseason. Like right away, we're talking about the Buckeyes, not the Buccos, the Buckeyes, right? We're talking about Michigan football. Yeah, go baseball.
And they lost their defense coordinator today.
Michigan did, yeah.
Okay, talk about baseball.
Sucks for them.
So, anyways, no, I mean, yeah, we got Mike on the show. Figured we'll talk a little about baseball. We have some actual, I guess, news you can say, something in the baseball world. I mean, with the MLB and MLBPA have finally come together, making some moves. Hopefully the season's coming quickly. We have the Hall of Fame voting. Barry Bonds not in. David Ortiz is. Maybe we'll talk some Pirates prospects, right? But that's why we got Mike on. We got the expert here. He's the all-knowing of Pittsburgh Pirates, MLB. We brought him on the show to get these insights. Which, by the way, Mike, you're covering basketball, so perfect.
Yeah. I actually had to step out of a game the other night because Rob Manfred called me to talk about, all of the stuff. So yeah, I am the closest insider. Whoever else you follow on Twitter that calls himself an insider, unfollow him. Follow me.
Called
How long-
you,
tell
and
us-
then he
tell
called
us your handle.
Hassan right after you.
The handle? Oh, that's at Mike D. Persak. Come on.
There you go. You got to
How
follow
long
Persak.
How long till you get a Hall of Fame vote?
8 years. So I may never get it. Which is all like, okay, I know we don't want to get into this. Like, I'm sure we'll get into this more later.
We can get into it. Yeah.
That's also part of it is like in general, the Hall of Fame vote is like a bunch of older journalists. Like that's why half of them aren't revealed on Twitter because half of them aren't on Twitter. and when they age out, like I wonder if there will be enough like young baseball writers who are like still hanging around to get their vote.
When Mike was in college, thinking about his promising journalistic career, because he knew that was a growing industry, he couldn't wait to get that vote.
Yeah. I mean, I had the NL Cy Young vote this year. Like, I'll take that. I'm fine with that.
Ooh, that was kind of controversial, you know?
I know. So, yeah. Like early in the year, I was like,
race.
When they first asked me, I was like, thank God, like that's an easy one. I'll just vote DeGrom.
Yeah.
And then he got hurt. And so down the stretch, I was really sweating it, but I ended up going with Wheeler. So
thank God. Thank God. All right. You made the correct choice.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm really smart. Really.
I don't really know. I'm not pro anybody really with that.
No, I got it both ways.
Yeah.
Like, you could convince me that Burns deserved it more, but whatever.
You could convince me, and I'd even entertain Scherzer. Like any three of those, like I would have been completely fine with winning that award.
Yeah, and like honestly, Walker Buehler had a shout too. And not to go on a complete tangent, but like the biggest problem that I had with it was that I wanted to vote Wheeler number one, but by the criteria that I set for like, okay, volume matters. Well, then Walker Buehler had like the next, like he was the other volume guy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Scherzer and Corbin Burns were like the, whatever stats, rate based, whatever. And so like, it was weird to split them up, but in the end it was like, who cares?
Right.
Like not really like who cares, but it's like, if you split them up, no one's going to be like, well, you split them up. Like, at that point it is what it is. Like once you get the first two, then you're good.
Mm.
I agree.
No, I get it. Not the like who cares as some of the Pittsburgh media who have MLB Hall of Fame voting, but who cares in a different element.
No comment.
I think everybody cares. It's just I disagree with some of their viewpoints on the matter.
Definitely.
I'm not gonna say anybody doesn't care. I think they all care. I just disagree with some of them.
Yeah.
It's called stupid.
Let's get into the Hall of Fame voting. So obviously, as we know, David Ortiz gets in first time on the ballot. We talked, Jim talked about controversy as far as the Cy Young Award. I mean, I guess you could definitely say there's some controversy over David Ortiz making it first time Hall of Famer or first time on the ballot. And people like Clemens and Bonds don't get in their last time on the ballot. So I don't know, Mike, maybe you can give some insight, in 8 years, if this was 8 years from now, right? And you had this vote, maybe you could talk to us. What's your thoughts on no Bonds, no Clemens, but David Ortiz in?
So, I mean, like I'm on the side that Bonds and Clemens should get in, but it's because like, you can't like really start to split hairs. Like I think it was actually Bomani Jones who was saying this about Schilling actually with like the character clause. Like you can't really start to judge any of this unless it's like directly on the field or whatever. But there's so many mitigating factors with the steroid stuff where it was like borderline encouraged during that era. And so it's like, I don't know, you just start pulling on like, a thread. And next thing you know, like the whole, sweater comes undone or whatever. Like it's really strange to like start to parse. But in my opinion, like both Clemens and Bonds should get in because the on-field stuff was so dominant and the steroid era was so strange where, most all the best players were doing it. So, I don't know. Like I understand why people voted the other way, but like, I don't agree with it at all.
My biggest annoyance with the whole thing is it's the same voters that were voting Barry Bonds for MVP every year. and you can't tell me they had no idea he was using steroids then. Everyone knew.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, you know, and it's also like the best point that anyone brings up is Bud Selig's in. And like, it's not, you know, like, and I know that it's almost played out at this point that everyone keeps saying that, but it's true. Like,
yeah,
Bud Selig's in the Hall of Fame, and like, it's pretty clear that he didn't care about steroids, or like at least knew about it and was like brushing it under the rug until he absolutely couldn't anymore. And then it's like, you know, but this guy's still a Hall of Famer. So how can you really punish the guys who played under those rules or whatever?
I mean, I got into it a little bit on Twitter with someone who has a Hall of Fame vote this year, who didn't vote for those guys. And I mean, to bring up the Selig thing, you know, that was something that I brought up, right? Bud Selig is in the Hall of Fame. Clearly, like, why is it that Bonds, Clemens, we can go up and down the list, Manny, A-Rod, all these guys are being held accountable for what they did, but Bud Selig gets rewarded for overseeing the whole thing and just letting it all happen, right? And you could argue the David Ortiz thing. I mean, if you really want to look into it, you could say that the David Ortiz thing is maybe a little bit different than the other ones. But at the end of the day, the writers didn't vote Selig in. So I guess that may be one thing. Like, I don't know if the writers would have voted Selig in, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing to debate. So it's just I get where they're coming from. The Major League Baseball Hall of Fame has that character clause. What's crazy, I mean, it's subjective, right? So it's up to the individual how they want to interpret that. What I'm really curious on now is like you mentioned, like, when do you stop now, right? So you've just decided what Barry Bonds did and what Roger Clemens did is not they're ineligible for the Hall of Fame based on those criteria. So now in a few years, when we get to see Justin Verlander and we get to see Carlos Beltran and we get to see, you know, Altuve down the road, are those people now ineligible because they cheated? You know, Verlander, you can say that there was something funny happened to the spin rate, right? He's doing something to the balls. He even like admitted it. There's text messages that say he did it. Is Garrett Cole now ineligible for the Hall of Fame because he used sticky stuff? Or all these pitchers who've used sticky stuff, are they all ineligible because they all cheated? So, like, how far do you go on this? Because baseball is just a game where throughout its history, people always did something to have some sort of an edge. And there are people in the Hall of Fame who did things to get that edge. If we want to just stick locally with the Pirates, Willy Sargel was named in a federal trial for using amphetamines during the season and passing it out to teammates, right? So, and he's a Hall of Famer and he's beloved by everybody in the city, but he also cheated. Like, so like, you know, when do we stop? Like, do you just, is everybody out now? Because for the most part, there's been a lot of people, especially pitchers now, who you can say, nope, they all cheated. They can't be in.
I think they kind of had something going where they were drawing the line at steroids and all other cheating they were just letting in. But now we're kind of like in this gray area where, well, like Mike Piazza, he's like a 50th round pick. He has back knee all over. You're telling me he didn't use roids. Jeff Bagwell is like a 30th round pick. He just bulks up. He's in the Hall of Fame. David Ortiz did use steroids. So now we're just in this weird gray area where they're just deciding as it goes.
Right. And so, like, I don't even know what is the answer just to take out the character clause like altogether, or is the answer to like more clearly define it? Like, I'm not even sure. Mm-hmm. But in general, like, it's kind of unfair to, like, you know, I don't know. Like, I don't agree with you know, multiple ballots that were sent in. But like, at the same time, is it really fair to ask these people, like, judge the character clause? Like, what a strange, like, you know, wrench to throw in there.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, you know, the other side of it too, is that people are now like, oh, well, like, you know, what is it, like Today's Game or whatever committee that can now vote on them. Like, how do we know that some of the 16 members of that committee aren't going to be like old time baseball players that are like, oh no, steroids disgrace the game or whatever. Like, no one knows. And the only reason I bring that up is to say that, like, I'm not sure what the sample size is that you could like pull to be like, to get the 75% of people that like are okay with steroid use, or like, recognize that it's more nuanced than being just okay or not okay with it. Like, I don't know. Like, it could, if you brought it to broadcasters instead, or ex-players or whatever, like, I'm sure that it would be a similar issue. But at the moment, it's just like, baseball writers and like old crotchety guys going on like to write a column about like how Barry Bonds disgraced the game or whatever. Everyone could dunk on him on Twitter, and then it's like, all right, well, this is the problem. But I'm not sure that problem is so easily fixed, in general.
Problem with that players selection is that's how Harold Baines gets in, because he played with that were on the selection committee. And also with the character clause, like, we're asking these guys to put people in based upon their character so that they can go into a museum with Ty Cobb in it.
Right. But and like the other thing about it too is like, it's like, all right, like there's a character clause. And that's it. That's the only guidance. It's like that part. It's like, do with that what you will. Like, there's no definition on like anything having to do with steroids or anything having to do outside of baseball. It's just like, hey, just make sure that you judge their character as well. And it's like, oh God, I don't know.
And what I think is funny is like, we've really kept it because the similarities, of course, like why Ortiz is in, because he technically kind of had this test where he failed. It was leaked out, but in the same sense, maybe it wasn't, right? There's this error. But at the same sense, that was more than Bonds ever had, technically speaking, right? I mean, Bonds never failed a test. Like, truly, you're going off of...
Right?
Right.
Yeah. Like, Clemens never tested anything. He was just named in the Mitchell report. And, like, maybe that means that he did it, or maybe it means that he doesn't. But, like, now he's wrapped up in this too, right?
Yeah. And I mean, he opened his mouth where Bonds never really did. So
right. Yeah,
that probably puts more of a stain on him, again, character and personality or whatever. And I kind of get that and understand that to a degree. But it's like you're kind of going off of hearsay to a degree. And I think we all kind of know. I mean, did they do it? I'm sure they did, but there's nothing proven. You're going off of what we all think that happened, or what Jose Canseco is telling you that happened. So, and this is the guy that, meets with aliens every week. So that's what we're going and basing our judgment on, right? With this character clause. But like, so part of it is that. The other part of it is just like you said too, Mike, these are guys that, I mean, you're thinking about what 80% of baseball was doing this. Well,
no, that's a really good point that we're basing the character clause off what Jose Canseco says in a book.
the guy who goes to Barstool Sports boxing tournaments and loses at like 65 years old.
Right.
If you were named in Jose Canseco's book, you are not allowed in.
That's basically it.
But like, there's part of that is the problem, right? But then like this other part of it is, now I lost my train of thought, Tyler.
My bad. I'm sorry. You gave the first good point in North Shore 9's history, and I need to give you credit.
Oh, the 80%. Yeah. So like, right. I mean, we kind of, if we're speculating all this too, right? Through our speculations, what we're hearing in reports and other players, I mean, it was like widespread. Like pretty much everyone was taking steroids. So if that was the case, then doesn't that pretty much equate that it was an equal playing field? So if like you're looking at Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, and like these were two of the best players you've ever seen before like any steroid implications, and then they took steroids, which is what everyone else was doing as well, then they were still equal, right?
Right. And if you poll like the people who played with Barry Bonds, like I'm sure that they would tell you like, no, this guy was like really, really good. Like, no joke, no steroids aside, or like, or with the knowledge that everyone was doing steroids, like they would tell you like, No. Like, yeah, I was the guy on the mound when we had the bases loaded and we walked him intentionally, and I was A-okay with that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, all of those things still stand because the era is all tainted. So, like, what are you going to do? You know, like, where do you draw the line? And what's also interesting that's like only slightly being talked about here is like, you know, A-Rod got like what 35%, and I get that it's different for every guy. Sammy Sosa wasn't close. Like, you know, it's such a strange line to draw too, where it's like, okay, Barry Bonds might be the best baseball player ever, and so I get like why he's getting a higher percentage than other people, but it's like, you know, at the same time, like if you're going to say like that being the best baseball player of all time is okay, it, you know, even if he did steroids. However, being the like 25th best hitter of all time in Sammy Sosa and doing steroids, not okay. Like, we're not voting that. Like, you know what I'm saying? And you know, arbitrary numbers. I don't have an official ranking, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, it's all just so arbitrary that like, what are you going to do?
I think some of that comes from Sammy Sosa was a scrub without steroids.
That is true.
That's the thing with Sosa. Like, I know, like, I filled out my fake Hall of Fame ballot, and you know,
you are a loser.
You can have 10 people on there.
We do that.
You can have 10 people on there, and I only put 9. I did not put Sosa on the list. And the reason it's like you just said, Tyler, like he was really good for a few year stretch where he obviously did steroids, but he had too many years where he just wasn't really good. So the steroid, like he was one of those people where he clearly became a really good hitter because of steroids. Whereas these other guys like Bonds and Manny Ramirez and David Ortiz and A-Rod, they were good hitters, whether or not they were using steroids or not.
Right.
I mean, those are 4 of the most elite hitters, you know, of the past of all time, not only just the last few decades, but no, the A-Rod thing, yeah, it is a little weird because A-Rod only got 35%. So, like, what is it that makes Barry Bonds get in, but A-Rod doesn't? I guess A-Rod actually got suspended a couple of times.
Yeah, but, and people were also drawing the line at like, you know, in 2003 they started cracking down, and A-Rod was still doing it afterwards. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, if you grew up in that era and you had a lot of success on steroids, and then it was like, well, if you do this, you won't get caught or whatever. Like, you can, that's an easy rabbit hole to fall down. So like, yeah, I don't know. But anyways, like, all of this is just to say, like what we were saying earlier, that the character clause is just so vague that it's kind of unfair to be like, hey, you know, like, judge this guy on whatever you think the character clause might mean. Like,
yeah, no, I'm somebody where I would just throw the character clause out the window. Like, I even had Schilling on my list.
Yeah,
but like, I mean, yeah, he's obviously a really, by all accounts, seems like a terrible person, but he was a really good pitcher, and he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame because he was really good at what he did.
Right.
So, you know, there, like I said, there are people who are just as bad as Curt Schilling in the Hall of Fame, and yeah, I would have put him in. I would
argue much worse.
I would have put all those people. Yeah, and there's a whole lot worse, but I mean, he's up there.
You must not be a Rhode Islander, Tyler.
But like, he hasn't killed anybody, at least to my knowledge, directly.
True, and you know, I don't know. I guess we maybe don't want to go down this road, but like,
yeah,
the you know, the Omar Vizquel stuff too. Like, there's something to be said about like how that all went. And so like, you know, maybe it's not even as black and white as like, oh, you need to take it out. You know, I don't know. It's just such a strange like situation. But in general, like, I think it's you know, I think it's unfair to ask people to like just judge character and leave it at that.
Yeah, and I'm glad Jim brought up the Schilling because, and again, you know, I brought this up and started this by comparing with Ortiz and Bonds and Clemens because there's that tie, right? But there's another person who was obviously left off with Schilling, right? And it's what I find so just odd about this whole situation, right, is you find a lot of writers make it a point, an effort to say, because for the most part, a lot of fans say, oh, these old writers, like, you know, Bonds was mean to him, so they don't want to vote him in. It's like, no, guys, it's nothing about that. It's nothing to do with this. It's because of the steroids. It's because of steroids. It's not because how we were treated. But then those same people talking out the other side of their mouth don't vote in Schilling, who I think, just like you're saying, like this guy, like you look at his resume, how do you look at it and see what he's done and think to yourself, this isn't a Hall of Famer? But yet you're going to use, again, some character clause, which isn't on field stuff. Like Bonds and, Clemens was on field performance, like it hindered on the field, right between the lines. Schilling just, whatever, he's a nutcase, right off the field per se. But like it wasn't anything on the baseball field. Like he didn't cheat, he didn't do anything there. So how do we talk out of both sides of our mouths as well? Like that's what like bothers me here with this.
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of agree with you. Like, yeah, and it's weird because like, I don't know. I've never in my life been inspired to go to bat for Curt Schilling. Like, I don't particularly want to. But like, it's true. Like, I don't know. Like the point is not to, I don't know, read their tweets 7 years after the fact and say, oh, like this guy sucks, not going to vote for him. But that's how subjective it's become, where it's, it like the point is almost not even baseball anymore. It's just annoying.
Right. And so like
by the way, it's also like equally annoying to like have to do this every year, right? Like, and it's not going to stop. And I'm not saying like this specific, like I enjoy talking about it with you guys. That's not what I'm saying, but it's like, on Twitter every year, like it's just setting up for like people get their hopes up that this guy's going to get in like on his 10th year. Like, hey, he's not. And it sucks, but like, what are we going to do about it, man? Like, unless the Hall of Fame changes their criteria, like this is what it is. So I don't know. It all just sucks. Like it sucks that it's gotten to this point.
Yeah. It's a good way to recap it.
Well, now that we're all pissed off, let's talk about the CBA.
Let's talk about that's definitely going to be a fun topic.
Well, honestly, Mike, again, the expert, right? You got Selig, you had Selig on your line as well. Now you got Manfred on your line. We know you're in with all of them. But yeah, so tell us a little bit, like this two sides finally met, right? In person, 2 days in a row. Crazy stuff, right? No one walked out after like 5 minutes and said, we're not talking to you ever again. So like, I kind of feel, I think a little bit optimistic into this offseason that even though the sides are very far apart, like baseball will come together and we won't miss games. I feel it'll be a struggle, but I really felt like we're not going to miss any games. Are we close? Like, how are you going to break down just right now, just in general? Do you think we're close to having baseball back?
Closer. I don't know. Like it's weird because all this stuff could just like break in a second, right? Where it's not in a second, but like over a couple meetings, you figure they can hash some of this stuff out because like literally in the last 2 days, they had 2 meetings and a few like different pillars fell, right? And not, maybe not the largest ones in front of them, but like it's clearly getting closer. And so I don't know. It's weird to figure, but I will say that like I think the timeline is different than what some people want you, or not want you, but like are leading people to think it is. Like, if they miss when pitchers and catchers were supposed to report, that doesn't mean that the season's delayed, really. Like they still have some leeway. They can just have a shortened spring training and like figure it out. Like, and I'm not sure exactly if that's what they're going to do or want to do, but like there's still some time. And I think we did see this week, if nothing else, that like progress can be made pretty quickly. I will say, and like I don't know if this is the right place to say it, but what drives me insane, and I'm sure that it's driven like fans insane too, is like the people who are in, who are like they're meeting today, and everyone's like, "Wow, crazy, let's go!" And then the meeting ends, and they're like, "There's no deal struck, and there never was expected to be one." And it's like, well, why didn't you say that beforehand? Like, like no one knows that. Like, why wouldn't you tell us that before?
Mike, in regard to the shortened spring training, have you talked to anybody around baseball that's concerned about pitchers with having the already a shortened season 2 years ago, then ramping back up, then possibly having a shortened spring training. Is there any concern around right now that you've heard?
It seems like pitchers are trying to stay ready as much as they can, like knowing that that's a possibility. Like maybe not yet, but at some point, like they'll start to, similar to during COVID years. Like it seems like pitchers are trying to start to find places just in case, like, because you never know, like you don't know when the season's going to like just suddenly restart, or like, hey, we're going back, and you want to be ready for that. So, I think that on the bright side, like some of these players have contingency plans anyways, where like places they worked out near home during COVID or whatever, where they like know they can go throw 40 pitches or whatever. I mean, you've seen it, like even with like normal off-season workouts, like Mitch Keller's all over, like everyone, he's throwing 99. Did you guys hear? Right. So like, those guys have places to throw. So, but from what I've heard, like that's kind of what they're keeping their eye on, what sort of workload they have to do. But it is weird because like they can't talk to the team, so they don't know exactly like a workout plan or anything like that. So I don't know.
Go from throwing 60 innings to 180 back to like maybe 100.
And then I guess is the plan still, I mean, this is really only affecting 40-man roster players.
Oh, yeah.
So come February 16th, do all the minor leaguers report just as normal?
Yep.
So that's good to know. I mean, at least the guys who you really, we really care about, because let's be honest here, the major league team, we don't really care about all that much, because doesn't seem like Ben Cherington cares all that much about it. So the people who we care aren't really going to really miss a beat.
Was this a big brain Ben Cherington play, where like if you rebuild at this point, then and don't have any quality major leaguers, then when there's a lockout, you can can still progress more. The Yankees don't have they don't have any good minor leaguers. So.
I would argue no, because he acquired 150 40-man roster required players.
That's true. Everybody he acquired, he had to add to the 40-man. Yeah. He was probably hoping this would happen last year.
That actually is a good question, though. Like if like guys who are Rule 5 eligible, are they allowed to report to minor league spring training until like for the Pirates, and then the the lockout ends and suddenly they have a Rule 5 draft, and now Mason Martin is going to the Los Angeles Angels.
Weird.
Yeah,
maybe we should ask the Pirates beat writer.
You'd almost like if you are.
I don't know.
Pirates,
I haven't thought of that until this second. I'm sorry.
Like if you are the Pirates, do you almost like? Because I would imagine. I mean, yeah, they would still go. They're still in the organization. They're just not on the 40-man.
Right.
So, but as like, let's say if you're playing spring training games with no 40-man roster players, do you like hide Mason Martin? So like you're like, let's just not even play Mason Martin so that no one can even see him. I don't know. That's a strategy.
You make him hit right-handed and play shortstop.
Yeah, be like, Mason, you're playing shortstop today.
I never thought about that. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, you're like showcasing these players for other teams now.
Yeah, so like to do Cal Mitchell and Mason Martin just get like no playing time.
I haven't thought of it. Tyler was like, we should ask the beat writer. I haven't thought about this till this second. Sorry.
Because, I mean, I would imagine there's a spring training schedule. So, like, even if we're still locked out at that point, those games are still going to be played.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think so.
Wait.
Yeah. Why not?
Oh, right. Gotcha.
You've got the
Get Mackie on the show so we can get some real answers.
Do they let Shelty manage the like AAA like roster in the spring training game against the Orioles?
Yeah.
Or do they get Miguel Perez in there? That's the real question.
You've got Shelton managing all the scabs.
Do we get to a point where we just get scabs? I think that'd be fun. The Pirates would be the best team.
I don't think we get to that point, but I do think like just like a fun idea. And I don't know if this is even possible to do, but like if there is no Major League Baseball, could you basically just play minor league games at your home stadium? Like if you're the Pirates, could you just be like, "Hey, Altoona, sorry, you're playing at PNC Park this year"?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it would really make the owners of the actual Altoona Curve franchise really upset that they don't have any home games. But like they probably have to get like royalties paid to them and stuff like that. But I mean, if you're the Pirates and you got the Altoona Curve playing baseball games an hour and a half, 2 hours down the street, be like, hey, come here, have some fans come into our building. We'll sell tickets.
Well, they can have the World Series like TV money when Nick Gonzalez wins MVP.
Right. Yeah.
Although he might win MVP by the end of this year in MLB too. So even if there is a normal season,
are you playing the show?
Very much so. Very much so.
He'll be there.
Leonardo, I thought you said we were having Mike Persak, not Cody Duncan.
Anyway, so yeah, so obviously, like my next question, I guess, to you is, what have you been hearing about the two sides? You know, what are they agreeing on? What are they not agreeing on? Maybe what's holding up the CBA still from happening?
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much seems like it's still like the general like semantics of paying guys sooner. At least like that seems like a major part of it is the MLBPA wants guys to get paid a lot more when they're younger. And part of that was originally shortening free agency, like taking it down from having to have six years of service time. And they've since have backed off on that, but have still wanted more from, from pre-arbitration deals, like with the minimum salary, they wanted that to raise. And then the other side of it too was revenue sharing. Like there's still a huge gap there where the players want less revenue sharing and the owners don't want to move at all. And there's a couple other things, but like the part of it that is like, I don't know, sort of encouraging is that both sides seem to be backing down from certain pillars. So, it's like I said earlier, like it seems like it's getting closer, but still like not quite there. And the people who are in the know are like, like really in the know, sorry, are like, it's still far away and it's not going to happen in one meeting, but they don't tell you that until after the meeting. And so, you never know how quickly this stuff can go, but at least there's some progress being made. So.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like, though, based off of what we are seeing, we probably shouldn't expect any major changes to really happen.
Oh, no.
I mean, it seems like we're talking little things really at this point, mainly, like you mentioned, paying people before they hit free agency. So now it's really just a matter of, okay, well, how much is that going to be? It seems like, they kind of seem set on this idea of like a top 30 players by WAR get this bonus pool, which then, I mean, are you using Baseball Reference WAR? Are you using Fangraphs WAR? And that, I don't know, I guess you're using Fangraphs WAR, I think is what they originally were talking about. But yeah, that's an interesting concept, like paying people by WAR. And it seems like the owners, their proposal was laughable. It was like a $10 million bonus split between 30 people. It's like, that's not, it's not very much. The players were like, that's not going to do it. So it seems like we'll probably find something there, like a bonus pool for those top players who aren't free agents yet. But like, if you're sitting around hoping that, you're getting a salary cap and a salary floor, don't hold your breath on those things, it seems.
Can't believe it.
Yeah, like what are your thoughts too? I found, like he said, laughable. The players I think wanted 100 million. MLB was like, no, we'll give you 10. And then MLB said, because like you said, like they want the younger players to get paid earlier. And MLB's like, all right, cool. Well, we'll give you 615,000. After like the minimum's already what 570? Is it 565? 575? I forget.
Yeah.
So like, is MLB? Are they really, really trying here on their side? Like, I guess, what's your take on this? Do they feel like they have MLBPA by the balls, basically?
I think in general, like, I think what you can kind of, like, the only thing that you can really glean from at least the preliminary talks is, like, what they are conceding on and what they're not. Like, the 10 million, bonus pool to players that aren't free agents yet or whatever, like well, you can look at that and be like, well, they're 120 million because I think the players was 130 million pool. Okay. So you can look at that and say like, oh, they're 120 million dollars off from each other. But it's also like, okay, the owners conceded to that point of like, yeah, we could be game for this. And then, but like, I think the numbers can come together pretty quickly. I think it's the general ideas that people aren't willing to budge on. That's like, really the sticking points, which is why like revenue sharing is a big deal still, because like the owners were like, oh no, that's a non-starter, whereas the players like tried to concede a little bit on revenue sharing without giving it up completely. So like, to me, like those are the things that I'm looking at more, not necessarily like because the numbers you would think could come together like more quickly than the actual ideas themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because, once you're open to an idea, then it's just a matter of trying to figure out what works best. Yeah. Anybody else got any questions else about the CBA stuff?
Can we just quick mention, is it Manfort? Manfort's the owner of the Rockies, yeah?
Manfort.
I saw that today.
Dude,
where he's sitting.
What I miss?
And DiNardo loves bashing the Rockies. So, oh my God.
Dude, so yesterday he was in the first round of meetings or whatever where the MLBPA made their proposal, and he was saying like owners simply can't afford this. And then today he was not invited back to the meetings, and there was like I think Ethan was retweeting this, but there was some lawyer on Twitter who was saying that like if you concede in bargaining that like you can't afford something, now that opens up the MLBPA to ask for your entire finances. And so like Manfort may have just gone in and just completely like screwed the whole thing up. Like we'll see. Like I don't know. Like that may just be like a little bit dramatic, but at the same time, it's pretty clear that they like let Manfort in, and then one day into it, we're like, "Yo, like we got to get this guy out of here."
And he's like the chair of the selected ownership group by Manfort, isn't he? Like of the 7 owners he selected to be on whatever the committee is, he's like the chair of it.
At the very least, the representative at the table.
Yeah.
Well, I remember someone said, and it's like you've got this owner and he's saying we can't even afford to own the teams anymore. and it's like, well, then why aren't you selling it? Like, why do you still own the Rockies? Like, if it's that much of a burden to you, why do you still own the team?
Well, that's what happens when you don't have a GM, a analytics department, anything there.
Yeah, Rockies.
Because it's cool.
It does.
That's
really
why you own a team. Like it's awesome to own a team.
It does seem like we're at a point
agree.
as fans that everyone should be on board that we're not going to see anything as fans that changes. Like you're not going to see changes in the game, really.
Well, it seems like the universal DH is coming for sure, and it seems like expanded playoffs is definitely a thing, because I think the players were like conceded that they're okay with a 12-team playoff, but not 14, or it was something like that. Mm-hmm. So it seems like there'll be expanded playoffs, which I personally don't like. I don't know how you guys feel, but
love it. Don't listen to these two. They're going to complain.
No. Like I'm in
teams
between.
that aren't going to try now, and everyone's going to be stuck in mediocrity. I don't care. The Pirates are already mediocre. Give me some quality, like watchable baseball in August.
There.
Yeah, Jim can talk about this. I'm in the middle of them both.
So I think the whole thing that the baseball's big problem right now is that there's not too much of an incentive to win. And how do you fix that? How do you fix teams actually wanting to win?
How do you fix me watching in August? Put them in a playoff hunt.
The way that you fix you watching in August is that your team that you're watching wants to win. That's how you fix it.
Nope. Just by getting to the playoffs.
So by just expanding the playoffs, you're not really fixing that root issue. You're just you're just expanding the guest list, right? You're not actually making teams want to win. You're actually maybe even incentivizing teams to try even less, because it's like, hey, with 14 teams, we don't really have to try it all now. We'll probably just make it every once in a while just by sheer happenstance. Why even try?
They're not trying now.
That's what I mean. So what can you do to make teams try to win? This isn't one of those.
Anything's an improvement, because if the Pirates are shooting for mediocrity, they haven't been doing that for a while.
Pirates aren't even shooting for mediocrity. The Pirates are shooting to be the worst team in baseball.
If we get but if we get a bigger playoff bracket, I'll take us shooting for mediocrity. If Hugh Hefner expands his guest list to include me, I'm not going to complain. I'm going.
If there's 14 teams in next year's playoffs, the Pirates are not going to be competing for one of those 14
but
spots.
The following year they might be. And they might be shooting for Wade Miley in the offseason off DFA, and we won't have to hear.
Why would they do that? They're not going to give Wade Miley money. There's no point.
Sure there is. They could be shooting for mediocrity.
No, they'll be mediocre just with their young players that they have bringing up through the system. They don't have to actually try.
Sweet. I can watch the team in August for once.
Be mediocre. That's fun.
Are we shooting for something, or are we shooting for a first overall draft pick? I'll take the playoffs.
I think to me, even beyond like just the like competitive balance part, is it's like, what's the point? Well, like, what's the point of having a 162 game season if there's 14 teams in the play? Like, you might as well not have that. Like, have 81 or whatever, and let that roll. Like because there is no point of like getting a larger sample size when it just means that the Dodgers stop playing all their starters in early August or whatever.
Right.
Look, we're talking about adding one playoff team per league.
We're talking about adding two.
Yeah.
Now. Per league.
We are now.
We have 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one.
So if we're adding 14,
well, if
two more,
we're talking about
MLB
12.
wants is 14.
MLB wants 14.
Yeah,
so we just added one more. We just if they go to 12, they're going to go to 14 in a few years. It's just going to happen.
Sweet, and then let's cut the games down to 7 innings too, because I don't need to watch middle relievers either. And
so really,
Mike can get out.
And we're gonna have another CBA issue then.
So all you're saying now is play less games, play less innings. So you just don't even want to watch baseball.
We're just gonna have round robin playoffs.
Let's
the way the Pirates are currently constructed. No, I don't.
Let's make this so that we can watch less of it. Is what you're saying?
Tyler doesn't even like baseball. He hates it.
I spend my entire life around baseball.
It's basically the Little League World Series, but just with adults. That's what Tyler wants.
No, I'm just saying, if we're gonna have starting pitchers go 5 innings, we might as well just make game 7 innings. Call it a day. Get out of here in 2 hours. Mike can go home early and wrap up his article.
That I'm okay with.
Now, what they
only
should
the last
do,
part. Only the last part.
What they should do, and what I really like what they did last year, is keep these like 6:30, 6:40 weekday start times. That's what they need to do.
I can do that too.
Yeah,
that was so great.
Yeah, I'm off.
Really, I just don't want to watch until 10:30 or 11.
How about pitch clocks even shorter, like 5-second pitch clocks? You got to hustle.
So I like the idea of pitch clocks, and it works in the minor leagues, and all the pitchers in the major leagues now have already been doing it their entire minor league career. So it wouldn't even be an adjustment for the majority of these guys. I don't understand why that's not just an automatic go to a pitch clock. Just adopt what they've been doing in the minors, because it works. Like, the game's quicker in the minor leagues, and it doesn't affect, like, it's not like as a viewer you're like, this is bad. Like, no one ever doesn't get the pitch off in time. Like, it all works.
It is also like it definitely does work. At least in Altoona, when I was in Altoona quite a bit last year. Like, I think I saw like 2 or 3 like balls or strikes called because of the pitch clock. Because and I don't even know if people like generally know that, but if like the umpire can deem that it was the batter's fault that the pitch clock went off, and then it's a strike as opposed to a ball, which is hilarious. But however, I don't know how a robot umpire does that. How can a robot umpire discern who's at fault?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was my question here too. That coming to AAA. I mean, we've seen Swagger to be vocal about it. Have you heard from any minor league players, any AAA, since you could potentially talk to them, their thoughts on that?
Well, I haven't heard from AAA guys who are worried about it coming to them or whatever. But I actually did a whole story last year on like the guys. I think Eli Wilson was in Bradenton for a while and talked to me about like what it was like catching for a robot umpire. And he was saying that like, it's a little strange because like the strike zone really isn't like, it's just not quite the strike zone. Like they have to do some refining of like the shape of it, because with a full rectangle or whatever, like it'll cross like a breaking ball will cross the bottom of the strike zone and like bounce in the dirt and it's a strike. And like anyone who's ever watched baseball will be like, well, that wasn't a strike, but it technically like crossed the plate in the strike zone or whatever. Like there were still, and that's not to say that happens all the time, but there were still some issues with that. So like, there's that side of it, but I assume that as they bring it up, they're going to further refine it and like, figure out some of the kinks in the system and whatever. But, I think in general, for the people who have experienced it, it's like, well, it's part of life. Like it is what it is. It's not the worst thing in the world. It is strange, but whatever.
So I used to be like pro strike zone, like pro robot strike zone. And I've since switched my thinking. I don't like it. And my whole reasoning is because, you're now taking away a valuable skill that catchers have, and you're just deeming it.
You're a Henry
not
Davis
even.
fan.
Yeah, so I hope he gets better.
You're taking away a position from him.
No, I'm not. Whatever. Well, what I'm saying though is like it basically makes the catcher position. Really, all you got to do now is you got to be able to pop and throw. Like the rest of it, you could just put somebody back there, have him kneel down on both of his knees, just catch the ball, get his signs from the dugout, and as long as he can throw every once in a while when there's a run around base, like that's all you need.
Yeah. And I actually talked to the dearly departed Jacob Stallings about this too.
Yeah.
Because he was like, he worked so hard on his frame. Like that's why he's a good catcher, is because he's so good at frame. And he worked crazy hard on it because he wasn't originally good at it, realized that was like where the game was going, worked super hard on it, and became like the best defensive catcher in baseball. Mm-hmm. And he was basically saying like, yeah, I mean, it sucks, but like you got to adapt to reality or whatever. But while he's going to be like workmanlike about it, at the same time, like I think people who are running the game or who are on the outside can say like, man, boy, like that really sucks. That sucks for those guys who like work so hard at this stuff. And I guess, like that'll if they do make the change, it'll change over to where like, okay, now guys are like catchers are only worrying about like the next inefficiency and whether that's popping and throwing or whatever. But it is very like, it's just so strange to just like suddenly implement this. Like you might see guys who are like, oh yeah, like they don't have value anymore. Like, sorry.
Well, I mean, you take somebody like JT Realmuto, and like the Phillies just gave him a ton of money. And a big reason for that is because of his framing ability, right? Mm-hmm. And so now if you take that entire part out of his game, like JT Realmuto is still a good hitter, right? But is JT Realmuto a good enough hitter to justify, huge money, right? So I kind of think you're now going to see a shift where, hey, does the catcher almost become a second designated hitter spot?
Mm-hmm.
And you can just put somebody back there who can mash and just be like, hey, we just need you to throw and catch just be able to catch a ball and be able to throw. That's all we really need you to do. And just like, if a ball's in the dirt, just please don't let it go to the backstop. But how much catching skill do you really need at this point?
All right, so hear me out. This is actually a backdoor way of baseball ruining itself more. There will be even less offense because when there's no one on base, they'll just put 9 fielders in the outfield or whatever, and so no one will ever get on base except for home runs, and that'll be it, or walks, and that's it.
So there is a rule in the Major League Baseball rule book that someone has to be positioned behind home plate. Because I looked into that. That was an idea I had once.
I say we brought that up. I thought with Fort that idea.
I hate being outclassed.
So I thought of that. I was like, wait a minute. If there's an automatic strike zone, if there's less than 2 strikes, or if there's no one on base, why even have somebody back there? Because like you said, it would be more efficient to have that catcher move somewhere in the field and then move them back there when there's 2 strikes or when there's somebody on base. But yeah, it turns out you can't do that.
So suddenly Williams Astudillo is the most valuable player in baseball.
Yes.
yeah. Right. But I mean, yeah. So does this make Kyle Schwarber a lot more valuable? Right. Somebody who he can catch, but he's not really that good of a catcher. But he can mash. Right. So does Kyle Schwarber become a much more valuable player in an automated strike zone world? Whereas before it was well, he really can't catch. He's really not that good in the field either. He can just hit a little bit. But now you're talking about somebody who he knows the basics of catching. He can do it. But that's not really what he's known for.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives him a home.
I agree with it completely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was slightly in jest, and obviously it's not the perfect example, but we talk about Josh Bell, having your worst defender, he couldn't play first base. Now, obviously he couldn't really throw. So again, it's not the perfect example, but it's if he could just go behind the plate, then that takes away that liability at first base. You have that bat in there, and now you have 2 DHs. So, but I'm with you too. I definitely am not in for the robot umps, because I'm with you. That's a craft. You talk about, you hear these crafty players. You learn that skill. Jacob Stallings is crafty. He worked on that. He earned that. I don't want to see that go away.
Don't care. Anything that makes Yadier Molina obsolete and loses Angel Hernandez a job, I'm in for.
Oh, Hernandez is gone now, right?
No, he's still there.
This isn't his last year?
No, I think
it was Country Joe's last year, wasn't it?
Yeah. Joe West is gone, but Angel's still there.
But this will make Yadier so obsolete. He will be begging for a job.
Yadier will be retired.
Well, I'm just.
Will he? We don't know. Cardinals might give him another $10 million deal.
If he can't schmooze up to the behind the plate umpire to get a bunch of strike calls, he's worthless.
Speaking of pine tar on the chest plate.
Exactly.
Cheaters.
Yeah.
Cheaters. They can't get in the hall.
Actually, every Cardinal is a cheater because they hacked the Astros computer system that one time.
Actually, yeah. What about that?
So every Cardinal ineligible.
In 10 years, I got you. Or in 8 years, I got you guys when Yachty's on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And just attach the picture of him
Yeah.
Nope, he cheated.
Oh my God. Well, I guess we talked about AAA. Should we talk a little bit about the Pirates farm system? Baseball America came out last week. Some updated rankings. We didn't really talk too much about them. Last week we had a little bit. We had Dan on. We were talking more zips. But figured this week maybe we'll talk a little about them. So, I don't know, Mr. Beat Writer, do you have any critiques on the players that were released? Any surprises?
All right. Can you please refresh me on exact rankings of like where the guys were? Do you have it pulled up?
That is Mike's way of saying I don't subscribe to Baseball America.
No, I actually do. Jason and I have it pulled up, but I can't remember exactly where all of them were ranked. Other than like, I mean, obviously the guys who like normally were.
I've got it up here. So number 1 was O'Neal Cruz.
Yeah.
At 14.
2 was Davis. 3 was Gonzalez. 4 was Contreras. 5 Peguero. 6 Priester. 7. This was the one I think that caught a lot of our eyes. 7 was Andy Rodriguez. 8 Michael Burrows. 9 Jared Jones. 10 Carmen Mlodzinski.
Yeah, I think I had 2 takeaways originally from it, and A was that I guess really just to appreciate how quickly Ronzi Contreras has risen. Like, I don't know, like, you know, I get why he's still not like higher in the top 100, but even just to make an appearance there is pretty wild from where he started and what the Pirates, or I guess what general consensus was when the Pirates traded for him. And then the other side of it was Andy Rodriguez, and I don't know. It's weird because like you look at a guy and you're like, well, he's 23 years old and low A or whatever, and you adjust your expectations from that. But then when like people who really know what they're talking about in terms of scouting or whatever rank him, and it's like, well, maybe you got to start paying attention to this guy. Not that I was completely ignoring him or anything, but I don't know. Like that one stood out to me too.
What about like the jump of Peguero? So I mean, everyone knows about obviously Ronzi Contreras, right? We have Ronzi Day, right? Everyone's been well aware of Quinn Priester last year because of his COVID site work. Like no one actually saw, but like the hype he got, you know. But it's Peguero that jumps over them. So as far as the top 100 rankings, Peguero slides in at 78, Contreras at 80, Priester at 88. Is there something like with Peguero that maybe we should get more hyped about?
Well, he had a good end of the season. Like he kind of brought it along. But with all these guys, like I tend to stray, like be hesitant with your like expectations until they actually do it in the majors. Like,
Wait,
I don't
what?
know.
No, that's not what we do.
That's at least where like because
you just said Nick Gonzalez is getting MVP this year. Come on, man.
You're right. You're right.
Let's say that.
But like, I mean, every guy you've ever talked to who's made the majors is like, yeah, the hardest jump is AAA to the majors. Hardest jump is AAA to the majors. Hardest jump is AAA to the majors. So like, the farther down a guy like has a good performance, the less likely I'm inclined to believe that that's going to make him a major leaguer. And so like, you know, I don't know. Like, Peguero pretty much did what you wanted him to do at high A, especially at the end of the year. It seemed like he figured some things out, was starting to hit for more power, like had decent fielding stats, like, you know, all that. Like and he's super young for that level. And so like there's that side of it. But at the same time, it's like it's still high A, and that's a huge hitter's ballpark. Like everyone hits home runs there. So you know, what are you really supposed to think? And I don't know. Like the answer is really just that you won't know until they're actually there, right?
So what do you think about the? Go ahead.
I was going to say, looking at the top 100 list, Peguero actually slid into 78th on the top 100 list. So he made a nice jump, like you mentioned. And yeah, I think that's my thing too. Is just, you know, when I saw Peguero this past year, you could definitely tell that like there was some talent there, especially like on the defensive side of the ball. Like it seemed like, you know, he knows what he's doing there. I didn't really see him hit that well in the games that I saw, but you know, by all accounts, you know, seemed to hold up well for his age at that level. But no, it was nice to see the jump because he was a guy going into last year that we all wanted to see because, you know, we missed the COVID year, you know, and you know, then all of a sudden he started showing up on, you know, maybe he's like a fringe top 100 guy. He got into the top 100 last year, and now he's, you know, inching his way up. So it will be interesting to see that jump to Double A. because I think that's when you can really kind of start getting serious, like you mentioned. Like A ball is A ball, Double A is at least closer to the majors. It's still not the majors, but once you get into Double A, then we can kind of talk. We can kind of start talking a little bit more serious about these guys on whether or not they may turn into what you're hoping for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially like with, I don't know, you see it all the time with guys who struggle. Like even Carter Binns, how much you value him or not, but that's a good example of a guy who was like hitting well at high A, came to Double A and was not hitting very well. Like it's not easy for these guys. And at any point, like, it's normal for a guy to come to a new level and struggle for a little bit and then figure it out too. But at any point they could just not figure it out, right? Like that could happen at any point where you just reach the next level of talent and it's like, well, that they're actually not good enough. So, and honestly, all of this is to say, like, this sounds really negative about Peguero because the question was about Peguero. That's not really Peguero, he seems to have decent tools especially for his age, especially at that level. Like, I'm willing to give him more patience than some other guys even, but like, I don't know. It's just really hard to prospect watch and truly project things when all you have is rankings,
So what do you think about the, I guess, rise and fall of Quinn Priester? Because last year we just saw him rise up every single prospect chart without really seeing anything from him. This year he didn't have a bad year, but he's not where he was.
Yeah, I think it is just sort of like, I don't know, lack of dominance at that level in certain starts. Like he did have some bad starts, but it is kind of strange to me too, because like there were a few starts where he was so good, like just by numbers. And obviously I wasn't there like watching him, but like there were a few starts, especially towards the end of the year, where he was just really, really good. So I don't know, maybe some of that is like other guys in other organizations rising up or whatever. But that was a little strange to me because it didn't seem like he had the type of year where you would have your opinion like swayed negatively towards him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think just to kind of go along with that, I think it was more of just like a correction. Like I think he got so much hype during the COVID summer league and all that. And no one really saw him, but everybody just told everybody that he just looked unbelievable, right? And so they were like, okay, well, everybody's saying he looks unreal. So he got this huge jump, and then he was good. Like he was really good. Outside just a couple starts, he was a really good pitcher, and he didn't do anything to make you think otherwise for the most part. I know when I saw him in one start, and he looked amazing. Like it might have been his best start of the year, but just everything was working for him. His curveball was just absolutely unhittable. Like no one could touch it. And he just was mowing hitters down. And he looked like he looked like he belonged in Double A at that point. It's like, what's he even doing with these guys? But then, he did struggle in a few starts. But I think there's not really much to be concerned about with him. Let's see him in Double A, see how he performs there. The stuff is all legit. Like the fastball, the curveball, the slider, it's all there. He's got the stuff. It's just now a matter of like, can he command it good enough to do it at the major league level, right? So we'll just kind of see how that progresses.
I do wonder in general too. Oh, sorry, yeah, I do wonder in general how I mean, I get that the people who like do these rankings, like they're gonna go scout wherever they can, and if it's an instructional league during COVID year, like whatever. But I wonder how much, like in general, those things were overvalued just because it was the only thing you could go see at the time. When you could also believe that like guys went in there and were not their same selves, or like maybe Quinn Priester just like had better facilities than everyone else during COVID or something like that. And I'm not saying that is or isn't true, but I wonder in general if like maybe guys got a little too excited or too down on guys during that like instructional league or whatever.
Yeah. So last year, obviously they made their debuts, right? Rowan Z. Contreras and O'Neill Cruz. They made their debuts, so they know they've reached PNC Park. but they're probably going to be a mainstay at some point in time this year as well. My question to you is, of the two, which one of them beats you up first?
O'Neill, because he can reach further than Ronzi. They're both running at me at the same time, but O'Neill has the reach, so he gets to me first.
Gotcha. So O'Neill Cruz has been pretty, I don't want to say controversial. Maybe it's been a small group that's made it that way. But, obviously he's been the number 14 prospect of baseball right now with his ranking. Big hype with him. We know the tools that are there, but we know there's a lot of, with no pun intended, swing and miss to his game, right? So I guess my thing is, what's your take? What's your perspective on O'Neill Cruz going into this season? Like, what can maybe the Pirate fans expect out of him once he hits PNC for good?
I think that the hitting is just like the question is just going to be, once he gets to the majors, can he hit like consistently? Because the power. I mean, we saw it even in his 2 games. Like the ball he hit out of PNC Park was insane. Like there are not many people who could hit that ball that far with the type of swing he swung with. So like the hitting for power part, I think will always be there, just like naturally gifted. Like the question is just like, once he faces major league pitching, can he hit for average and get on base? Not, I don't know, batting average is whatever, but you know what I'm saying? Like get on base more consistently and see balls better. Cause even during that 3-game stretch, it seemed like there were times when he was really caught off guard by the way that people were attacking him and whatever, and swinging a pitch that he shouldn't have, and was fooled on certain things. So that's maybe something like even what I was talking about earlier, where you won't know until he gets to majors, but the power is definitely going to be there. And then on the defensive side, like, I feel pretty confident he can be a shortstop. I don't know if we might have talked about this last time I was on, but the scouts and the people that I've talked to, I've never talked to anyone who's like he needs to move, like in the game. I mean, in fact, scouts from other teams that watch him have been the most like effusive in their praise of his like ability to play shortstop, which tells me something. And from the games, like I won't pretend to know as much as a scout, but from the games that I've seen, like it's the throwing that he needs to, like, that's going to be what tells you whether he is or is not a shortstop. If you can figure that out, then great. But he can do everything at the shortstop position, like physically in terms of range and all that. It's just a matter of kind of harnessing it, I think.
Seems like at the plate there's a lot of early Javier Baez.
Yeah, that actually might be a decent like example. Obviously, probably with more power, I would assume.
I don't know, Baez could hit the shit out of a ball.
He really could, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's like generally fair. And I don't know. I stink at projections just because of what I was talking earlier. Like, I'm always low on a guy until they show me that's not the case anymore. So,
well, our last guest, his computer told us that O'Neill Cruz is going to be a Hall of Famer.
I'm not a computer, so give it to him.
His computer also said on the low side that he would be a complete bust.
Jim, remember that in 8 years I'll be qualified to tell you whether or not that's true, but not until 8 years from now.
That's true.
Well, I was going to bring that up too. So now go 8 years from now, right? When you're banning Yadi Molina from making the Hall of Fame, just for us, right? Pretend at the same time that Nick Gonzalez, O'Neill Cruz, and Figueroa are major leaguers. Which one of those three? Because you said like everyone's praising, right? O'Neill Cruz's defense on shortstop. I'm not praising it, but they see him sitting there, and that's been like the guy who's moving off in Pittsburgh. They all talking about. So I guess who are you maybe theoretically feeling that's going to move off middle infield of those three?
All that being said, it's probably still O'Neill Cruz, right?
Really?
Because while that's being said, like to me, like defense still isn't really his strong point, right? And whereas like I think with Figueroa, it probably is, just projecting. Like you would think that speed and defense would be his thing, and so then if that's the case, and then you like a front office would probably tell you that it's smarter to move O'Neill Cruz somewhere else So I don't know, but it would also depend on like, no one's really seen him in the outfield. So like once they actually get a look, like if he can do that, then fine. Because like the other side of it too is that Peguero's probably more projectable to another position that isn't first base. Just because you could say, well, he's good here, he can be good anywhere. Whereas O'Neal Cruz is large enough that, like, I don't know, maybe he's not good fielding fly balls or something. Like, I don't know. So but at the same time, like, I think O'Neal Cruz would probably be most likely in that scenario, but I don't know.
Nardo, you did not mention Diego Castillo.
I did not.
Notice that.
Starting shortstop.
I noticed that. I noticed you didn't mention him.
Or Marcano.
Yeah, what about Marcano? Denard?
Yeah.
What about Mike?
Marcano?
I haven't seen him. I don't know. Sorry.
I have a general rule that you can't play a position that you couldn't hit a ball in the air to. So that takes any outfield position out of the question for Marcano.
So is he the catcher? Because that might take him out some other positions as well. I mean, the swinging bunt doesn't count, right?
In 15 years, when we move to the machine pitch era of baseball, he can slide in there.
Right. He can be the guy standing next to the machine.
Might be an umpire by that.
I'm sorry. I'm just got this vision now. I'm like T-ball and the kids standing next to the pitcher.
Coach pitch Major League Baseball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Oh God.
Jim's favorite player.
God. What just gets me is like he was like targeting this guy. Like he wanted
I love
him.
riling him up on this.
God. He wanted him so bad, and he's just trash. He's awful. I'm sorry. Like he's not a major leaguer by any means. I hope I'm wrong, but he doesn't seem like he can hit the ball at
You
all.
might be wrong, Jim.
I hope I'm wrong.
He is also. I will say that he's also so young.
He is.
That's true. He is.
Yeah, but he couldn't hit a ball at 18 years old. I don't think he's going to hit one at 23.
You don't realize that the human brain is not fully developed until 25. You can't judge a prospect until he hits 25.
I can judge the fact if you can get on base aside from an infield single.
Yeah, but
when
you
your
can't
highlight package is a bunch of bunt singles.
I was loving that. Like, regardless, I promise I'm not giving an opinion on Marcano. I haven't seen him. I don't know. Like, he is still young. I think he still could be good. A lot of people value him. Regardless of all that, the highlight packages of the swinging bunt, like bouncing over the pitcher, were pretty awesome. Which honestly just goes to like this is the Pirates right now, man. Like, it sucks. I feel bad for fans, like, that this is kind of what you're resorting to.
I feel bad for you that you went to journalism school to write about baseball and you end up covering the Pirates of all teams.
Hey, buddy. Michigan doesn't have a journalism school, baby. Let's go. I did this by choice, baby.
Fair.
That
would explain why you're
it's a fun
doing
team
the same
to
job
cover.
as someone
There's
else.
a lot of crazy stuff that happens.
That's true. Yeah.
And the fact that there even are fans, I mean, that's honestly, it's incredible at this point.
I also enjoy that
right here.
I also enjoy that the group of fans that follow me are like it's a small enough group still that, like, they're people that I've received replies from for 2 years now or whatever, where, like, there's no one where I like say something and I'm not big enough where I say something and like a bunch of people from like Blau Knox jump down my throat about like how Key Brian Hayes doesn't hustle enough or something. Like, I can still have fun on Twitter talking to Pirates fans, so I appreciate that.
So Michigan really doesn't have a journalism school?
No.
What a shithole college.
Tyler, did you go to Ohio State?
Sure didn't.
I didn't think so.
I'm a Youngstown State Penguin.
That's basically Ohio State, so.
Pretty much.
That's
I
Jim
didn't have-
Tressel.
I think pretty much every one of
You
those
sign my paychecks.
little shitty schools in Ohio are basically they're all Ohio State.
It's the same in Michigan. Like I mean, it's either Michigan or Michigan State, but it's the same way. Like it's the same way everywhere. I'm sure it's just mostly the same in Pennsylvania, right? Where everyone's pretty much Penn State, even if they go to like, whatever. I know that there's
Slippery Rock.
I know that there's the Pitt sector of it on the west side, but I think in general, like it's kind of the same way.
Mike, the best part about Youngstown State is that you have so many surrounding high schools that send their kids to Kentucky to play football, and they just beat the shit out of Louisville every year.
It's not every year. It's just like the last couple.
Okay, can this is just a fun fact about Kentucky. Did you know that Mark Stoops' contract adds a year onto his deal every time he wins 7 games, and adds 2 years onto his deal every time he wins 10 games? That's the best contract. Whenever anyone asks me like what school you'd want to coach for more than any other, I always say Kentucky. That's the best job security in the world. Like as long as you can put a watchable product on the field, everyone's happy.
There was at one point in his tenure, he had more contract extensions signed than he had SEC wins, conference wins.
That's awesome.
Like I think at one point he had like 2 conference wins, but he had already signed like 3 extensions.
That's the best.
My favorite was whenever Kentucky lined up a wide receiver at quarterback and just beat the shit out of Louisville.
What's that guy doing now, Lynn Bowden?
He's in with the Dolphins.
Miami. I think he got hurt.
Yeah, he got hurt.
He got drafted by the Raiders, and they cut him because he sucks.
No, he got traded.
Then he went to the Dolphins.
He got in a little bit of trouble too.
Jim, I had Malik Cunningham on my fantasy college football team this year.
I'm sure
absolute
he did pretty
monster.
Well. Yeah,
absolute monster. Yeah. I drafted Spencer Rattler first overall, and then just obviously dropped him for Malik Cunningham the rest of the year. It was great.
No, Malik killed it. He's coming back. It's going to be he's going to be like an 8th year senior next year.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's just fun to watch Youngstown beat Louisville into the ground with Mark Stoops and whoever their offensive line coach is, or whatever his name is. It's also from Youngstown. Anywho.
You got more to say, Tyler?
No, I know Mike has some plans tonight.
That is true.
Well, then we'll let you go, Mike. But as always, really appreciate you coming on. Maybe we'll talk to you during the season.
Yeah. Seriously, it's always fun, guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Be sure to check out Duquesne basketball.
They lost.
That's right. It's because you weren't there.
Get that article up.
We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Soccer Scouts.
See ya.